Hello and welcome. If you're somebody who likes Scotland and you like being active in Scotland, whether it's hiking, grouse shooting, deer stalking, fly fishing, for example, and you want to stay somewhere swish, somewhere really upmarket with fantastic food, even better wine, then there are a couple of places I'd like to recommend where I personally stayed recently. The two places are very different from each other, but they're both located in the Cairngorms National Park. The first place is the Five Arms, and it's located in a village called Bremo. And the second place is called Killiehuntly Farmhouse, and it's in Kingussie. I'm going to split the video into two. I don't want to make it too lengthy, and I'll possibly refer to it as part one and part two, but I'll attach the two videos together. I'm Anesu Sagonda, and I produce educational luxury content for anyone after the finer things, whether you're young and starting out in life and wanting to reap the benefits of buying better quality from the get-go, or you're into luxury but you want to focus more on high quality, under the radar brands and services, or you're new to money and wanting to learn how to navigate the terrain, then my content is geared towards you. Killiehuntly Farmhouse is part of a larger company called Wildland. And Wildland is a company owned by Danish billionaire Anders Hosh Poulsen and his wife Anna. Anna and Anders are the largest private landowners in the United Kingdom. They own 280,000 acres of land in Scotland. And Wildland was literally started off the back of their love and passion for Scotland. It's a 200-year-old vision focused on rehabilitating the Scottish Highlands. And they have a number of initiatives that come under the umbrella of Wildland. They're focused on the community, growing, nurturing, and providing employment to local communities, conservation. They are focused on letting nature just grow, heal, and thrive. And that's through a number of projects such as planting millions of trees, deer management, the regeneration of woodland and habitat. And then the third component of the business is accommodation. And they have renovated a number of properties in Scotland and made them incredibly commercially viable and offered employment opportunities. And they source all of the products, the food that is prepared in the accommodation locally. So they're doing a lot of incredibly amazing work within the Scottish Highlands, incredibly noble, because they could invest their money anywhere in the world. And they have chosen one of the most worthy, one of the most positive projects anyone can take on. This time last year, we discovered one of their properties with my family called Lundies House. And Lundies House is located in the far north of Scotland, in a town called Tongue. And it's a property that's very similar to Killiehuntly in that they are small, intimate properties. Lundies House is a little bigger than Killiehuntly, but their houses, they have a main house and then adjoining cottages as well. And the focus is very much on a home away from home experience. Incredibly well put together, absolutely beautiful properties. I mean, you feel like you're living in an absolutely outstanding property. And Lundies House was absolutely amazing. The bedroom, fairly sizable with seating space. There was the bath, and I often joke about that and say I'm not the biggest fan of baths in the bedroom. I feel you need privacy, but there was also a sunken-in bathroom with the shower and a water closet. And then the property had two living spaces and a dining room. The dining room was absolutely outstanding. The walls were hand painted by French artist Claire Basler, and she's very well known for her floral paintings, and the walls were just amazing. Every single meal we ate in there, I would just literally marvel, my jaw would drop just looking at the walls. And then the living spaces, one of them had an honesty bar, and you could just sit in there whenever you felt. It's a small property, you don't always have a lot of people. Guests typically are out and about enjoying the property. So you will always get time on your own in the living room just to relax and enjoy the space, enjoy the house. But it's an absolutely stunning, very well appointed property. So that put us onto the brand, and we thought, oh my gosh, we have to stay in another one of their properties. And that is how we discovered Killiehuntly Farmhouse. The farmhouse has 4 bedrooms, and all 4 bedrooms are on the top floor. It's a double-story farmhouse. And the aesthetic throughout the property is Scandinavian. Chic, minimalist. Every single bit of detail in the house has been very carefully considered and then executed to the highest standard. It's an absolutely stunning property. We stayed in a room called Alder, and after looking at the other 3 bedrooms, the Alder is definitely the nicest of the bedrooms in the house. It's a comfortable size for 2 people, 4-poster bed, and the bathroom is spacious, wood, white, and quite a bit of light coming through. And then the ground floor, there are 2 living rooms. The first living room is a little smaller, moodier, darker than the other room, which is bigger. It's lighter, and it has an honesty bar. So from about 6 p.m. every evening, it's beer o'clock. There are nibbles in both living rooms, and there's an honesty bar where they set up soft drinks and alcoholic beverages, and you just take a note of whatever you have consumed. There's a tab for every room, and then you can settle that at the end of your stay. There's also a dining room that comfortably seats between 8 to 10 guests, and the focus is on communal dining. And then there's a fairly decent-sized kitchen with a table. You can work in there, eat in there if you'd like to eat away privately from the other guests. You're able to help yourself to hot and cold beverages. There are also alcoholic drinks in the refrigerator. Again, you just make a note of whatever you've consumed and note that in the honesty bar, and then settle your tab at the end of the trip. Also part of the farmhouse, there is a yurt, which has a sauna, and you can use that between 3 and 7 p.m. You just let the host know, and they will light the fire. And there's also a glass house with floor-to-ceiling glass walls, with a table, raw-tying bench, raw-tying chairs with really decadent shearling rugs on top. And you can have lunch in there or relax or just read and enjoy your stay. Also, as part of your stay, you can participate in a nature walk with a guide who's incredibly knowledgeable about the local flora, fauna. They can talk in detail about the various initiatives under Wildland, and the walk can be as intense or as relaxed as you like. Typically 2.5 hours walk around the estate. You can also go lock fishing. There are e-bikes, and you can go as far or as near as your legs will allow you to pedal. And then, of course, you can also go deer stalking. It's an absolutely stunning property. Very well put together. It's absolutely spectacular. Thoroughly enjoyed our time there. And what I really liked about the stay is that you just focus entirely on yourself and doing whatever makes your heart sing. Eat, drink, and then the host and the chef will take care of all the other excess details. The host takes care of the housekeeping, the running of the house, making sure everything is coordinated, organizing anything you would like to do. And then the chef takes care of all of the meals. Breakfast, lunch is typically a packed lunch, and then supper. All the meals are freshly prepared on site. And what I particularly liked with supper is that the chef would buy, we had fish the 3 nights we were there, and they bought fish every single morning from the fishermen. And they bought fish that was fresh and had been caught that morning. The meals are prepared to an incredibly high standard. They use local, seasonal, incredibly high quality ingredients, and the meals are just so beautifully presented. It was just an absolute joy staying at Killiehuntly. The good, the bad, and the ugly. The good, as I mentioned, absolutely stunning property aesthetically. The food is absolutely delicious, very well presented, high quality ingredients used. A small wine list, but a wine list that has been very carefully curated. It's absolutely perfect. Really liked the host and the chef. And the guide was fantastic, incredibly knowledgeable. And we are a family that really like to know and understand properties in depth. So it was an absolute joy for us. And if we could, we would have extended the nature walk, but the guide had other things to do. But we thoroughly enjoyed it, and I would highly recommend. The bad. What I'm saying in the bad and the ugly are both things that I think Killiehuntly can address. I really like Killiehuntly. I like the bigger concept of wildland and really want to see them winning. The farmhouse is small. It's wonderfully intimate, and it's somewhere I would actually recommend going with friends or with family. Noise carries in the property. And we joked every single night that there's no need to set the alarm because the doors would slam shut and incredibly loudly. I sleep with earplugs and I would still hear the doors. They would wake me up. And I was really surprised the doors would slam so hard. I have never actually stayed in an establishment where the doors slam that hard. And it's something that I'm not too sure why they slam and why there isn't some sort of a soft close. But that did take away, because if one of the other guests woke up early in the morning, like they did 6 o'clock in the morning, for example, and they went downstairs to prepare tea, as there weren't any tea or coffee making facilities in the room, the minute they left their room and the door slammed, then I would be up. And I think that may have also affected other guests. We just never spoke about it. And it's a little more difficult to tell a guest to keep quiet. It's just not your place. And then the second, on the nights we were there, a couple of the nights we had a different host and chef. And then the last night, a chef and host we hadn't had before. And there was a huge difference between them. A property like Killiehuntly, where it's small, it's intimate, it very much depends heavily on the energy of the host and the chef. The first two were a little more quiet. The host didn't interact as much. She was there. She was present when you needed help, you needed anything. She was able to field any queries very well. The chef was the same. Dinner time, they would come through and serve the food, and typically arrived for the main course and just said, it's XYZ, and they left. I kept thinking it would be a lot nicer if both interacted a lot more with the guests. And I guess you take the cue from the guests. But I would make the effort to try and converse, and I know other people would also converse. It didn't necessarily happen. But then the last night, exactly what I was thinking happened. Both the host and the chef were incredibly dynamic. The host interacted quite a bit, introduced himself individually to everybody, brought nibbles around, inquired about their day, and very much took the cue and spoke as much or as little as a guest wanted. And I think that's absolutely perfect for a property like Killiehuntly, a home away from home. The chef was fantastic. With every single meal, she came out and spoke about the meal and maybe said something that was interesting about how she sourced the food, or the provenance of the food. And I thought that was absolutely fantastic. And that is what you need. A host and a chef who are interactive, the chef who talks about the food and makes a big deal about the local, seasonal, high quality nature of the food. And that didn't happen until the last night. And I think it's something that should happen all the time. The ugly. The two uglies were incredibly bad, and it made me feel sad to have experienced them at Killiehuntly. And Killiehuntly is punting at a level of luxury where the issues should have not happened. The first issue, a couple of days before we arrived, the Met Office in the United Kingdom issued a weather warning and said there would be wind. It was an amber warning, so we had to be vigilant. We spent the day of the supposed amber warning day, that it would be very windy, hiking. And we didn't actually have any issues. Even with the hiking, we could feel the wind, but it wasn't very strong. And then driving to Killiehuntly Farmhouse, we didn't experience any of the wind. We only saw a couple of trees that had fallen on the side of the road. Nothing actually blocked the road. And then when we arrived at Killiehuntly, we didn't know where to go or what to do. There wasn't anybody to meet us. We just drove in and then went around a block of buildings we thought we were staying in, and then stumbled upon a member of staff who then directed us to the farmhouse, which we hadn't even seen. And they even recommended driving, as it was quite a distance, especially with luggage. When we arrived at the farmhouse, we didn't even know where the main door was. There were a couple of doors. And then we eventually went through the back door, and then we were directed to the front of the house. I think what should have happened is when we arrived, the two should have communicated, the two members of staff, and the member of staff in the farmhouse should have been alerted of our arrival, and she should have come out to meet us. We then struggled to find the front door. When we did meet her, she was frazzled because Killiehuntly had suffered off the back of the weather warning. The electricity had been cut off, and the water supply, although it's independent and it belongs to Killiehuntly, it is operated via the electrical source through the village. And so because there wasn't any electricity, it meant we couldn't use the water, and there wasn't any water. And all of the water had actually worked through the system. And so we were met by a host who was a little bit frazzled, and then she explained there wasn't any water, and we couldn't quite understand what that meant in practical terms. Went up to the room, couldn't flush the toilet, there wasn't any water in the shower. All the water had already run through the system. We thought there'd be a little bit of water. A little bit of history. We had been hiking prior to arriving at Killiehuntly, and Scotland is somewhere where we hike a lot, and we typically do long hikes, anything from between 5 to maybe even 8 hours. And we tend to go for the hardest category of hikes. So by the time we arrived, we were exhausted, and we were very sweaty and dirty. And we were desperate to shower before beer o'clock and then having dinner. And so when we found out there wasn't any water, we weren't quite sure what that meant in practical terms. So we ended up going down to dinner in our dirty clothes, because we thought, do we change into fresh clothes? But we have perspired heavily. So we had dinner, we felt a little bit bad, we joked about it with the other guests, and then went to bed smelly and dirty because there wasn't any water. Water and electricity were only going to come back after midnight. Killiehuntly Farmhouse had a storm in 2023, which was really bad, and they didn't have any water and electricity for 5 days. They learned a lot of lessons from that experience, and one of the things I'm sure would have been to have a backup for their electrical supply. I'm from Zimbabwe, and whenever we joke in the diaspora, we say when you're moving back to Zimbabwe, you need to Zim-proof your house, and that means getting a borehole, a generator, and solar panels. Generator means even when there isn't electricity from the main source, you can generate your own electricity in the property. When they had the first storm, and Scotland is somewhere that is problematic when it comes to weather. It can be very rainy, snow, you can get cut off for whatever the reason. A property at Killiehuntly's level should have a backup. They had discussed the generator idea off the back of the storm in 2023, which was bad. And then the idea was shelved. What happened to us should never have happened. They should have had a commercial generator. They are spending millions on the various initiatives, and buying a commercial generating, depending on the strength, costs between £7,500 to possibly £10,000. That is an absolute drop in the ocean when it comes to expenditure for wildland, and that is something that should never have happened. They should have had a backup source of power, a generator, for any situations where there is a power cut. And I sincerely hope they have learned from the situation and they rectify the situation, because that took away from our arrival. It was a horrible arrival. First of all, we arrived, we weren't met, we didn't know where we were going, and then finding out that we were really smelly and tired and just had to sleep like that. The second issue, the middle day, we had decided to enjoy the property. It's an incredibly stunning home away from home, and we wanted to enjoy the property. We wanted to hike, stay in a wonderful place that we enjoy after a really tough hike, but also just wake up, go for a nature walk, and then enjoy the property. And having spoken to the other guests who weren't able to participate in any activities because of the weather warning the day before, they had spent the day in the property and they were talking about how wonderful it was just lazing about in the one of the living rooms, the roaring fire all day. And we had visions of doing exactly the same. When we woke up the middle day, soon after breakfast, a lady who was behind decorating the property um, literally burst into the dining room, a fairly loud, confident personality. And she walked in, and it was a little bit awkward because she didn't quite read the room. It was larger than life, and we were a little bit taken aback. And then she mentioned they're hosting a photo shoot in the property. And we had heard them during breakfast because they were fairly loud. It's a small property and their voices carried. And so we asked the host, what does that mean? Because we wanted to stay in the property and just enjoy it. It is home away from home, and you encourage guests to enjoy the property. And we were asked to choose a living room we liked and to sit in there. And we're welcome to close the door. It's a small, intimate property. Even though we closed the door, the work behind the photo shoot was incredibly loud. We ended up leaving and going to sit in the glass house. And that's something we hadn't wanted to do until lunchtime, but we ended up spending a few hours in there to get away from the noise. What was disappointing was that the photo shoot is something that could have been organized in between guests arriving when the property was empty. When we left, Anders arrived for an annual meeting, and that would have been the perfect time to host the photo shoot. The photo shoot ate into our enjoyment. They literally took over the whole property, and we couldn't enjoy the property. And we stayed there because we wanted to enjoy it. We wanted to hike on the 2 shoulder days and then enjoy the middle day like the other guests, like you encourage. But the photo shoot team took over the property, literally took over, and we bulldozed it out. And that's something that should never have happened and should have been done in your time away from the guest time. The two things that were really disappointing, and they did affect our trip. And we undernard about whether to say something, but I think in typical British fashion, you just let it go. But I really wanted to talk about it because I would like to see Killiehuntly winning, and winning convincingly, unreservedly. But what happened to us, the ugly, they were really ugly and avoidable. Any thoughts, any questions? As always, let me know in the comment section down below.